I'd like to say that I was surprised by this, but it's not terribly surprising.
Young lives at risk. Why state officials in charge of protecting Texas' most vulnerable children say they cannot do their jobs.
By the end of this evening, I'm going to be blamed for everything that's ever happened.
Why not?
Why not? Yeah. Why?
Get ready for round two. We look closer at what to expect in tonight's presidential debate and how the debates could be affecting voters here in Texas. Good morning and thank you for joining us for State of Texas In Depth. I'm Josh Hinkle. People across Texas will be watching tonight as Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump face off for their second presidential debate. Tonight's debate in St. Louis comes after a record audience tuned in to the first Clinton-Trump showdown. 84 million people watched, breaking the record set in 1980 when 80.5 million watched Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan debate. An NBC News poll showed an overwhelming majority of likely voters thought Hillary Clinton walked away the clear winner. Just 21% thought Donald Trump won the debate, but a majority of overall voters said their opinions did not change as a result of the debate. So despite her strong showing in the debate, Clinton did not see much of a gain in national polls. An NBC News SurveyMonkey poll released Tuesday showed Clinton leading Trump by 6 points. That's virtually the same percentage lead she had before the debate. But the first debate may have swayed some Texas voters. A poll released Wednesday showed Hillary Clinton's support rose 3 points since the debate. Donald Trump still holds a comfortable 7-point lead, but it's a smaller lead than most GOP candidates usually have in presidential races. Both vice presidential candidates made many claims in their debate earlier this week. We fact-checked a couple of those claims with help from our partners at PolitiFact. Tim Kaine brought out a long-standing talking point for Democrats. He accused Trump of wanting to privatize Social Security.
Donald Trump wrote a book and he said Social Security is a Ponzi scheme and privatization would be good for all of us.
PolitiFact calls this claim mostly false. Trump did support privatization and compared Social Security to a Ponzi scheme, but that was in a book he wrote more than 16 years ago. In his run for the White House, Trump has supported keeping the structure of Social Security as it is. On the topic of health care, Mike Pence claimed that his Democratic rivals want to make the Affordable Care Act, known as Obamacare, even bigger.
Hillary Clinton and Tim Kaine want to build on Obamacare. They want to expand it into a single-payer program. And
PolitiFact also rates this claim mostly false. The Clinton-Kaine ticket has not proposed a single-payer program, which would be a government-sponsored insurance plan across the board, but they have promoted it simply as a public option. Millions of dollars worth of vital equipment missing from veterans' hospitals. You paid for it, so who's responsible now that it's gone? State lawmakers call on Texas state troopers to be nicer. What the DPS is doing now to improve community relations.
They are going to be displaced. Services are not going to be provided.
The state pulls out of the federal refugee resettlement program, but refugees are still coming to Texas. How some nonprofits are stepping up to fill the gap. Governor Greg Abbott followed through on his promise to pull out of the federal program to resettle refugees, but Abbott's decision will not stop refugees from coming to Texas. Texas traditionally takes in more refugees than any other state. Last year, more than 1 of every 10 refugees who came to America ended up in Texas. The resettlement of refugees in Texas is funded by the federal government and managed by the state. Abbott's decision means Texas will no longer distribute those federal dollars to the organizations that help refugees learn English and find homes and schools for their children. Some of those organizations plan to keep helping refugees. The nonprofit groups are turning to the public for help, and some have seen growing support from people looking to donate their time and money to help refugees who are placed in Texas. However, some service providers fear there's not enough resources to help.
The tragic thing about this is that the refugees who are here, who came here to have a better life, they are going to be displaced. Services are not going to be provided.
In a written statement, Governor Greg Abbott said he will continue to prioritize the safety of all Texans and urge the federal government to overhaul this severely broken system. Abbott's decision makes Texas the third state to pull out of the federal program, joining Kansas and New Jersey. Some Texas senators want state troopers and police officers to just be nicer. Several members of the Senate Committee on Criminal Justice described the tone in which officers speak as rude and disrespectful. The comments came at a hearing on ideas to prevent routine traffic stops from escalating. The director of the Department of Public Safety offered up a potential solution to improve community relations. DPS plans to make it easier for people to complain. The agency will soon add the information on how to file a complaint against them right on the back of the ticket troopers hand you. Texas lawmakers also discussed plans to introduce legislation that would require Texas schools to teach kids how to behave if they're stopped by police.
Then everyone will know what the expectations are and should be able to govern themselves accordingly. Not only what you should do, but what your rights are and how you avail yourself of your rights.
While law enforcement and lawmakers praised the proposed program for public schools, some senators raised concerns about creating an unfunded mandate. They're in charge of protecting some of the most vulnerable children in Texas, but a new report shows they're not getting the job done.
So I just think there's a matter of inventory, keeping track of things. There's just a management problem, real management problem in my mind.
Millions of dollars worth of vital equipment missing from veterans' hospitals. And you paid for all of that with your tax dollars to help veterans here at home. Now we reveal what's missing and who's responsible. More than $6 million of VA medical equipment and gear lost. You paid for it with your tax dollars, so we wanted to know what happened. The Department of Veterans Affairs lists the equipment as lost or stolen from hospitals and VA properties across the state. KXAN investigator Kevin Schwaller shows us what he found.
And I kept a copy of everything that I send them.
Milton Ritter keeps stacks of papers, a history of interactions with the VA.
Right here, the drop tanks.
Ritter flew B-52s for the Air Force during the height of the Cold War.
These here?
Now his battles are over things like medical bills. He fought a charge on one of his VA bills. It was a few dollars, but he believes every dollar counts, which is why Ritter had concerns when we showed him what our investigation found. Millions of dollars in missing VA property.
A dollar here and a dollar there, and pretty soon you're talking about real money. And that's exactly how I feel about it.
KXAN examined documents from VA systems statewide. In Central Texas, we discovered 267 items worth $250,000 listed by the VA as lost or stolen over a 5-year period. A $16,000 computer server, a popcorn machine worth $1,000, a $6,000 exam table, multiple medical carts, a TV worth more than $400, all unaccounted for. Across the state, we found nearly 5,000 missing items worth about $6.2 million.
Is that amount of missing equipment acceptable?
I would say that any equipment that is stolen or lost or damaged or unaccountable is not acceptable.
The VA declined an on-camera interview, but we did speak with the department's chief logistics officer for the region covering most of the state. We talked to him on the phone. He says a lot of the missing gear on these lists are older than their useful life. And the VA tracks about 230,000 items in the state. So 5,000 listed as missing is a fraction of the total. He also says sometimes it's a record-keeping issue.
I believe that many of these items were turned in, traded in, and the paperwork was not documented properly.
Still, he says during the years we examined, VA locations confirmed $750,000 in equipment reported stolen across the state.
Another disappointment from the VA.
We brought our findings to Congressman John Carter of Texas. He's taken up veterans issues in Washington. Carter says medical care is good at the VA, but he believes the management and culture at the VA need to change.
What goes through your head when you hear about those figures?
You know, that's a lot of money, that's a lot of stealing, and stealing is punishable by the law, and if it all took place in Texas, we have a place for them. But the reality is it's bigger than that. It's another mismanagement situation at the VA. And that's the real crisis at the VA.
On this issue, the department is trying to improve, rolling out tracking devices to help keep better watch of the stuff you bought.
Spending is out of control, and it may be just for reasons like this, that stuff gets lost, destroyed, has to be replaced, and they don't know where the money goes. I think it's just accountability.
That was Kevin Schwaller reporting. Here's what we found in other parts of the state. More than $1 million of missing equipment in Houston, $1.5 million in San Antonio. The biggest total was in the Dallas area with more than $3 million worth of stuff the VA couldn't find. That includes a piece of diagnostic equipment from the 90s worth $90,000, digital cameras, and hundreds of monitors. The biggest item in size that was a John Deere tractor from 1986. VA officials tell us someone stole that tractor from the Houston National Cemetery.
I'd like to say that I was surprised by this, but it's not terribly surprising.
Young lives at risk. Why state officials in charge of protecting Texas' most vulnerable children say they cannot do their jobs. State officials in charge of protecting Texas' most vulnerable children say they cannot do their jobs. New records from the Department of Family and Protective Services show the scope of the problem. Hundreds of children who reported sexual or physical abuse did not get checked by state workers. Political reporter Phil Prazen found in some cases they don't know if a child is alive or dead.
Just last month, Colton Turner would have turned 5.
It's hard, very hard. Hard for my family that he didn't get that first day of school.
His great-aunt, Diane Battles, spoke with us by phone and says CPS didn't do their job. They had no idea where he was until he was found dead in a shallow grave.
I feel like Colton would still be here if they would have just acted, if they would have just gone out and searched and hunted high and low for him.
But new documents from the Department of Family and Protective Services show on any given day, nearly 1,000 high-priority calls for abuse go unanswered by CPS. Another 1,800 kids were seen too late, according to state law. And here in Travis County, on average, more than 11 high-priority calls also go unanswered.
I'd like to say that I was surprised by this, but it's not terribly surprising.
Child advocates say there are just too many at-risk children in Texas and not enough caseworkers or CPS investigators.
What's happening now is that it's just compounding, and so we're finally seeing the serious ramifications.
DFPS officials say they're in a $40 million budget shortfall, and next session, they're asking for 510 additional CPS workers. Phil Prazen, KXAN News.
A spokesperson for the Department of Family and Protective Services said the numbers released last week are only a snapshot. There are many more children they don't know about. The report gives some perspective. When it comes to second-tier cases, those include cases where people suspect abuse or neglect. Nearly 4,000 children never had a face-to-face visit with a CPS investigator. Nearly 12,000 children who did have visits had investigators come after the 72-hour time limit required by state law. We've been following these changes to Child Protective Services since Colton Turner was found dead 2 years ago. Just this April, a KXAN investigation revealed caseworkers were struggling to close cases where children have been neglected or abused. The department requires investigations be complete in 60 days to help prevent more cases of abuse. A CPS spokesperson told us despite changes in the last 2 years to prevent staff burnout and improve training, some workers don't have time to complete their investigations. She pointed to an increase in the number of child abuse cases in the state. You can see that story online right now at KXAN.com. Just click on the Investigations tab at the top of the screen. Thank you again for joining us for State of Texas In Depth. Stay tuned for Meet the Press coming up at 9. I'm Josh Hinkle. Have a great day.